Pardon me, but do you have any grey poupon? I crack myself up. Don't go away. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fat Guy Productions. I am Paul, coming to you as always from beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. And I'm sorry about that. Look, today I'm going to restore a Sir Rodney Roadster, and that just made me think of royalty and fancy people driving around in limousines and asking each other if they have any mustard. So, I know. I really do know. I'm very self-aware, and I know I'm an idiot, so don't worry about it. It's all good. All right, let's just get to work. So today we're going to be taking on the Sir Rodney Roadster, and foreshadowing be damned, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm going to get straight to the point. I'm going to tell you a little sneak peek. This is not a casting for the faint at heart when it comes to decals. I'm just going to pre-warn you about that. If decals are not your thing, then this is a casting you might want to stay away from. That being said, it does look like a fun casting, and I'm excited to get into it, so we're going to go ahead and get this thing taken apart. Of course, we're going to start by drilling out the post, get rid of that using my shielded drilling. And then it's one post up at the front, and the back just kind of hooks on over a little tab. It's a little difficult, but it's not a problem. So the one post is actually the motor. So you've seen that before, where they use the engine and have a post on it. It goes through the body, through the base, and then is mushroomed over to lock everything together. And that's what we have happening here. But to take it apart, you follow the same procedures. You drill off the mushroomed end of the post, and then you pop the car apart. All right, with the end of the post drilled away and the motor removed, we can go ahead and just pull this casting apart. Of course, we have a base. That includes the wheels. We have the body. We have a little plastic roof piece, and yeah, it's not a real complex casting. The issue is going to come in the decals. It's going to be a bit of a challenge, but enough on that until we get to it. So, taking a look at this, the casting's actually in pretty good shape. The wheels, of course, are going to have to go. I'll use hot swap hubs to replace those. But generally speaking, there's no damage to the casting. It's got all of its parts. And now it's just a simple matter of getting it ready for the stripper. Okay, so after looking the body over top to bottom, I filed away a few little burrs. There wasn't really a lot to do here because I didn't have a post I had to deal with. I just kind of gave it a once-over and made sure there were no areas that were prominent that needed a little TLC. There really wasn't much. Just softened a few lines, and now we can go ahead and just drop the casting into the citrus strip and let the citrus strip do its thing. Now, normally, the post is part of the body, and I would have done that before I put the body into the stripper, but there's no post on the body. It's on the engine. So I've got the body in the stripper, and now I can turn my attention to preparing the posts so when I want to put this casting back together, I can. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run my Vix Bit over the end of the post that's sticking out the bottom of the motor, and that's going to clean away any burrs and dimple it just so that I can drill it out. Now, I have to tell you, I'm not a big fan of drilling little parts like this, like the motor. I probably need to get myself a little clamp or something that I can put these things into when I'm drilling. Because I've drilled into my hand before, and it's not fun because the drill bit doesn't just poke a hole in you. It twists and rips up the meat and just, oh, I don't want to get too graphic. Let me tell you, it hurts. You don't want to do it. So I'm not a fan of doing it this way, but you got to work with what you have. But I really do need to invest in a little vise or something like that. So anyhow, after getting the post cleaned up and drilled out, then I can go ahead and run my tap that I got from Brightvision using the Brightvision tap handle to cut some threads into the freshly drilled out post. And then I can go ahead and pop a screw in it and set the motor aside until I'm ready to detail it. So you've seen me use the Kaiweets mini screwdriver, and I love it. I don't know why. I just really like it. Yes, it's not that big a deal to take just a screwdriver and drive the screw in. It really isn't. But for some reason, this just, it's like the difference between driving a Volvo and a Cadillac. They both are cars, and they both get you where you gotta go, but one is just so much nicer. So there you have it. Okay, so I've pulled the body out of the stripper, washed off all the extra citrus strip and residual paint, hit it with a toothbrush, got it all cleaned up, and now we're going to just dry it off and give it a once-over. Now, look, it's not like a Spectraflame paint job where I really need to be concerned about things like toning and stuff like that. This is going to get an opaque paint job, so all I really need to do is just make sure everything is smooth and correct. So I give it a really good look, and then I hit it up with the brass bristle brush just to make sure I get off any residual flakes of paint or anything else that might be bothering me. Get all of that off, but that's really all I have to do when I'm going to go with an opaque paint job. So this is fortuitous. I'm going to be honest with you. I go into my decal stash, and I have decals for the Sir Rodney Roadster. And the reason I have them is I was looking to do a flame job on a different casting. And so I ordered a bunch of decals from Second Chance Redlines that were flames that I could see if I could work with or if I'd have to make my own. So I just happened to have a set. And that worked out really great. I actually ended up making sure I had 2 sets because I was concerned about how difficult this would be. So I checked, I made sure I've got decals. I do, I'm good to go. So now we can turn our attention to polishing everything. Everything needs polishing. The body doesn't really need it, but the base, yes. The motor, yes. Okay, so we're going to bust out the Flitz. I put a brand new buffing head in my rotary tool. We've got the Flitz out, put a little bit of that on there, and we get busy. Now, what I would tell you about polishing things, especially like the bases, because they have molded in words, and they have molded in exhaust, and molded in transmissions, and things like that. You have to polish from every direction, okay? Because if you don't, you're going to have places where the polish is going to build up and nothing's going to get polished. You have to polish front to back, back to front, left to right, and right to left. And that way, the bristles of the buffing wheel get into every nook and cranny. So I attack this from multiple directions to make sure that I really get into every little groove so that my bases look fantastic. If you just go real quick, it may look okay, but on further inspection, you're going to see places where the polish is blackened and built up, and it's just unsightly. So make sure you hit this up from every direction so that every bit of it gets a really nice shine. Okay, so once I'm satisfied with the work from the rotary tool, I'm going to go ahead and just buff this out using a soft microfiber towel. So I like to use the fuzzy side first so that that bristles or the hairs or the fuzz or whatever you want to call it on the towel can kind of really get in there and polish everything. I use a bunch of different techniques. Here you see I'm just rubbing the thing back and forth. Sometimes I'll wrap the towel around my finger and then use my finger like a burnishing stick or something like that. But, I really get in there and work this thing and make sure I get a really great shine before I seal this thing up. Okay, so once I'm happy with the shine that I have on the base and motor, I'm going to break out my Renaissance wax. And this is just a microcrystalline wax. It's going to put a protective residual layer of this waxy material over the metals to help keep oxygen off of the bare metal and keep it from oxidizing. This is something that they use in museums and stuff. They put it on the jewelry and things like that to help keep them looking nice. So all you have to do is you get a clump of it on your end of your finger and you just smear it in and you slurm it all around and you dig it into the nooks and the crannies and you really work it in and get everything, okay? Because if you don't, you're going to have spots that could change colors on you later in life, and you don't want that. So really work this in. Once it's thoroughly coated, then using the same techniques and the same microfiber towel, I will go ahead and polish this back up to a beautiful finish, and then it is shiny and protected and will stay really nice for a very long time. If I haven't ever said this, thank goodness for hot swap hubs. Okay, this is a casting where the axle goes right through the wheel, and I would normally have to replace the axles. And with the hot swap hubs, I don't have to do that. All I have to do is cut away the existing wheels, and then I can go ahead and put hot swap hubs on there and put on brand new hub-style Redline wheels. Works so good. I love these things. I could not be happier. I have found that instead of just trying to kind of take my cutters and just chop away big chunks of the wheel all in one pass, it's better to nip it away. So I kind of nip away the tire in smaller pieces. It makes it easier to cut and easier for me to maneuver, and it's just a better way. It may take a little bit longer, but in the end, it's a little bit easier to do it this way. Now, I'm going to be honest here, truth in advertising, I screw up. At one point on one of the axle ends, I get a little too deep, and I damage the squished end of the axle, and so the hot swap hub isn't going to stay on. And that is something you don't want to do, okay? I did it. I don't know. I just got a little too aggressive, and I damaged the end. But you'll be happy to know there is a fix, and that is in a pair of these the fence pliers that you can get from Harbor Freight. So I'm going to show you those in a second and show you how I'm going to take care of this. I'm going to pluck out the wheels I need. I'm going to pluck out hot swap hubs, get them ready, and then I'll turn my attention to the damaged axle, and I'll get all the new stuff put onto this casting. So these fence pliers offer a lot of leverage, and at the very tip, you can grab a hold of the end of the axle, and they offer so much force and pressure that you can squish the end of the axle just like they might do at a factory. So you just kind of get a hold of it and you give it a really good squeeze. I tend to not be deep enough, and I keep popping it off the axle, but it's just a matter of getting a good bite on it and giving it a good squeeze, and you'll flatten out the end of the axle, and that'll keep a wheel or a hot swap hub locked in place. Now, I'll tell you, after I did this, the hot swap hub still didn't really stay on perfectly. It could come off depending on how it was positioned. But once you put the wheel on, it squeezes that hot swap hub down and all the problems are fixed. So all I had to do was squish the end of the existing axle, put on the hot swap hub, put on the wheel, everything locked in, we're good to go. As good as new, no problems whatsoever. So using wheels I got from Brightvision, I, of course, you know me by now, I'm going to go with deep dish chrome wheels. I'm going to put some on this casting. It should look fantastic. The hot swap hubs, what I found is I've got this little pair of needle nose, and I get the back half of them, and I squeeze that hot swap hub really, really tightly and just kind of press the slit right onto the axle until it's just grabbing enough that it'll stay in place. Then I let go of it with the pliers, and using my finger, I pop it on the rest of the way. It works perfectly. But you'll be surprised how hard you're going to have to grip onto these hubs. Otherwise, they're going to pop out and shoot across the room into the carpet monster, and you're never going to see them again. So don't be afraid to bear down on these things a little bit. They can take it, and you're going to save yourself a lot of frustration here. Okay, so for the most part, this is a straight up restoration, and so it's going to go back to yellow, and for that, I'm just using some opaque yellow. I think I forget the exact name of it, but it's from the Redline Shop. It's part of their opaque paint line, and so I'm just using their yellow. I have already primered the casting with Tamiya Fine Primer in white, and now I just need to lay down the yellow. I mixed it with a little bit of hardener, laying that all down. And this is one of those castings where I really have to get a nice, good, smooth paint job down, because the decals, there's a lot going on there, and they're going to need a nice, smooth, glossy surface to lay down onto. So I've primered it, and I'm at the paint booth, and I'm just putting this paint down. And again, you can get that at the Redline Shop. And it's just their opaque yellow. And once we get that done, we'll set it aside to dry. All right, so here we go. It's decal time. Now, what I did is I started by cutting out all the decals. I've got all my supplies. I've got toothpicks, tweezers. I've got my brush. I've got my setting solution. I've got my water. I got everything I need to put the decals on. And I'm kind of test fitting, as you can see here. I'm just kind of making sure I understand how this decal has to go on. And here's the problem. This decal goes over a lot of different surfaces. It wraps around two corners on the sides. It wraps around the top. It does a lot of stuff. And frankly, I probably should have done a little bit more trimming of the decal, maybe put some slits in it to help it fold better. I might have done this differently, but as it stands, I'm just going to kind of get it on there and then let the setting solution do the heavy lifting here. So this is the first decal, and it's by far the hardest one, okay? Also, I'm gonna say this. I love Second Chance Redlines, and their decals are always top notch. But these decals were not perfect. There was problems with the decals that I had to work around. That made it even more difficult. Okay. At the end of the day, I got everything on, and it's going to look great, but it's going to be a lot of work. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm just taking the decal, sliding it into position, and making the general folds, okay? I'm not worrying about going over grooves and textures and stuff like that. I just want it to be where it folds up over the top and around the sides. Once I've got that down, I'm worried about position, okay? I want to use my toothpick and get everything positioned correctly, make sure it's all pointing the right directions. Then I'm going to slather it with setting solution. I'm going to use my Walthers on here because it's a pretty potent setting solution. Now, this is going to take me a couple days because I'm going to have to go back with setting solution a couple times to really get these decals to nestle in the way I need them to. So this is not a place to rush. This is a place to take your time, get the first decal on, get it kind of laid into position, and then start using a toothpick and a Q-tip and the setting solution to really kind of work things in the way they need to be. So the decal for the driver's side fender was fine, but the one for the passenger side fender was, well, I don't know what they were thinking. It doesn't seem right. It seems pretty out there. You'd think it would be pretty much the same as the other one, just flipped, but it's not. There's something askew about it, and you got to kind of work around that as you go. But you know, there's nothing for it but to get down and just tackle this. So I started with the back decal, the one at the back of the firewall, or the at the firewall. Then I did the right fender, left fender, and then later the front piece. And again, it was all the same as I went through this. Lots of setting solution, lots of patience, slow movements. Okay, don't rush. Just kind of nurse things into the position that they have to go into. All right, so once the decals were done and dry, and like I said, this took a couple days, I let everything dry really, really solid. I mean, there was no doubt everything was dry. And then I took it back over to the paint booth, and using some of the clear coat from Diecast Graveyard, I went ahead and sealed everything up with clear coat. This has made the car look amazing. It's protecting the decals. After all, you do all that work. You don't want to see it go down the drain because maybe you drop the casting and it ruins the decal or something like that. So everything's sealed up inside of clear coat, and it's shiny and it's beautiful, and it is now time to put this sucker back together. So the casting goes together really nicely, and I briefly thought about painting the plastic top, but ended up not doing that. I just took some Flitz and polished it with some Flitz, and I'm now just going to go ahead and pop it back on the casting. And frankly, at the end of the day, I'm really happy with the way this came out. It looks fantastic. It's going to be a great part of my collection. And let's take a look and see what we got. There it is, my Sir Rodney Roadster. And I'm going to tell you, listen very carefully. If you're a guy doing die-cast cars, unless you have really grade A decaling skills, stay away from the Sir Rodney Roadster, because this was difficult to decal. The decals were not perfectly designed, and the way they have to go on the car is complicated, and yeah, I don't think it's something you want to tackle. Now, you could do a Sir Rodney Roadster, maybe do a custom that might go easier, or maybe you should take a lesson from my stupidity and maybe tweak the decals a little bit, trim them, or do, I don't know. I was able to get through it because I do a lot of decals. In models, diecast, you name it, I've got some decal skills. So I was able to get through it, but it was not easy, and I would caution you to think twice before going into it. But if you do go into it and you get it done, it looks great. What a fun casting. I had a good time with this. I hope you loved the video. If you did, please give it a giant thumbs up, click subscribe, and don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss one of my videos. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you, especially if you have any thoughts on the decaling of this car. Very interesting. Have you done it? What did you think? Anyhow, enough for today. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I hope the rest of your day is just wonderfully happy and joyous. And until next time, this is Paul from Fat Guy Productions saying, be good.